So you've been really curious about how India's trying to become a major player in manufacturing, right? Like a global hub.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called the PLI scheme.
The Production Linked Incentive Scheme, yeah.
Yeah, and we want to kind of take a deep dive into that today with you and figure out where it is now, what some of the, roadblocks have been.
Right, the challenges have been.
And then what might be coming down the pike with this PLI 2.0 that everyone's talking about.
Exactly.
And really see, if India can really pull this off and become a manufacturing superpower.
Powerhouse, yeah. We've gone through a lot of material to get you the essential information on this big plan of theirs.
Yeah, so I guess where we should start is with kind of like an overview of what the original PLI was all about. Like, what were they trying to do with it and how did they set it up?
Sure.
And then we can look at some of those challenges that have come up along the way.
Okay.
Then we can get into this PLI 2.0 and see how they're trying to maybe tweak things.
Refine it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then zoom out and look at the big picture. Like, how does this all compare to what other countries have done to really become manufacturing giants?
Perfect, yeah. I think that's a great way to break it all down.
Okay, so starting with the basics, the PLI scheme, it was launched back in April 2020.
Okay.
And the big idea was to kind of supercharge manufacturing within India and to get, the big global companies to actually set up shop there, move their production.
It's interesting you mentioned the timing, right?
Yeah.
Because this was when global supply chains were really under the microscope.
Right.
People were looking for more diverse and resilient options for manufacturing.
Yeah, the world was kind of realizing that maybe putting all your eggs in one basket wasn't such a great idea.
Exactly.
And, this wasn't just like a small little pilot program either.
Yeah.
The PLI covered like a whole bunch of different sectors.
14 in all.
Yeah, 14.
From electronics to pharmaceuticals, even specialty steel.
Yeah, a really wide range.
A wide range.
And the way it worked was they would give companies these incentives based on how much their sales increased.
So the more you produce, the more you sold, the more you benefited.
Exactly, like a direct link between output and rewards.
All right. The goal was to incentivize growth.
Yeah.
And to get those economies of scale working.
Yeah, and it did seem to work, in at least some areas.
There were some definite successes in the beginning.
Yeah, like mobile phone manufacturing,
right,
pharmaceuticals and food processing. Those sectors really seemed to take off.
They did.
Which, shows that the idea had some merit, at least in certain contexts.
Right. It wasn't a total flop.
Yeah, not at all. But,
yeah.
It wasn't all smooth sailing.
No, definitely not.
Because some sectors didn't really see the kind of growth they were hoping for.
Right. Like IT hardware, advanced chemicals. Textiles, yeah, and specialty steel.
They all kind of lagged behind.
They did.
So it seems like the original design, maybe wasn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
That's a good point.
Different industries probably have different needs and challenges.
Right. And that brings us to some of the, the broader challenges that the PLI has been facing.
Yeah, like even with the mobile phones, which, on the surface seemed like a success story.
Right.
There's this issue of how much value is actually being added in India.
Exactly.
So, okay, we're assembling more phones in India, but what about the actual components, the stuff that makes up the phone?
A lot of that is still imported.
Yeah. And our sources say that the amount of value added locally is often in the single digits.
Yeah, think about it. The semiconductor chips the brains of the phone.
Right.
And all those other important little parts, those are mostly coming from outside India.
Right. So we're putting the phones together in India.
Yeah.
But we're not really making the core technology.
Right. It's assembly, not creation.
Exactly. And that makes India really dependent on other countries, which isn't ideal.
It's a vulnerability for sure.
Yeah, it's different from what China did, when they were building up their manufacturing. They really focused on developing those upstream capabilities, making the components themselves.
They wanted control over the entire process.
Yeah, and that gave them a lot more power in the long run.
Absolutely.
So that's one big challenge for India.
Yeah.
Another one is the size of the domestic market.
Yes, the demand issue.
Yeah, for some sectors like telecom and electronics, the Indian market just isn't big enough to support, mass production.
Right. If you want to be competitive globally,
yeah,
you need to be producing on a huge scale, and that usually means selling to the whole world, not just one country.
Exactly. You got to go global to really get those costs down and be competitive.
Economies of scale are crucial.
Yeah, and that's where Indian companies are facing some tough competition.
Yes, from countries like China and Vietnam.
Yeah, they're already producing a lot and their costs are often lower.
Right.
And on top of that, Indian companies might not have the same level of access to international markets.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe their technology isn't quite as advanced in some areas.
So they're kind of playing catch-up.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of factors all kind of working against them.
Yeah, it's a tough landscape.
And then there's this whole issue of dependency on foreign OEMs.
The original equipment manufacturers.
Yeah, the big global companies that are already kind of running the show.
Right. They have a lot of the power.
Yeah, and Indian firms often rely on them for, the technology, the designs, even the manufacturing processes.
Which means they're not fully in control of their own destiny.
Exactly, and that's where the lack of R&D investment in India really hurts.
Yeah, they haven't been putting enough resources into developing their own technology.
Especially in key areas like semiconductors, specialty steel, advanced chemical cells.
Those are crucial for the future.
Yeah, you can't be a leader if you're always relying on other countries for the most important stuff.
Exactly.
So you can see why there's been this push to kind of revamp the PLI scheme.
Yeah, enter PLI 2.0.
Yeah, they're trying to fix those problems and make it more, sustainable.
Address the shortcomings.
Exactly. So one big change is how they're structuring the incentives.
All right, they're moving away from just rewarding sales volume.
Yeah, it's not just about how much you produce anymore.
Now they want to see more value being added in India.
So like using more local components and developing more technology domestically.
Oh, exactly.
And our sources say they're specifically trying to encourage the localization of things like semiconductor chips and printed circuit boards.
PCBs.
Yeah, those are like the backbone of so many electronic devices.
Absolutely.
So if India can start making those locally, it'll be a big step towards self-sufficiency.
Right, less reliance on imports.
Yeah, and it'll force them to invest more in R&D.
Which is crucial in the long run.
Absolutely. And they're also tying the incentives more directly to export performance.
Oh, so rewarding companies that are selling their products globally.
Exactly, because that's how you become a real player on the world stage.
You got to compete with the best.
Yeah, and by focusing on exports, they're hoping to push companies to produce more, which will hopefully bring costs down.
Economies of scale again.
Yep, and then they can really compete with those established players from other countries.
It's a smart strategy.
Yeah, and another thing they're addressing is that lack of a strong local component manufacturing ecosystem.
Yeah, it's been a big weakness.
Yeah, because right now there just aren't enough local suppliers that can meet the needs of these bigger manufacturers.
So they're trying to build up that base.
Yeah, and they're encouraging joint ventures between Indian companies and global players.
So local companies can learn from the best.
Exactly, and hopefully the foreign OEMs will be, sharing some of their technology and know-how.
It's about creating a win-win situation.
Yeah, and they're also looking at ways to support MSMEs.
The micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Yeah, because those are the ones that have really struggled to compete.
Right. They need extra help.
Yeah, so PLI 2.0 is considering special incentives for them.
Okay.
Especially those involved in making components.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And they're also talking about improving access to credit and infrastructure for MSMEs.
So they can really participate in the global supply chains.
Exactly. And then there's the whole semiconductor issue.
Yeah, that's a big one.
A huge one. The world is facing a shortage of chips, and India is heavily dependent on imports.
Right.
So PLI 2.0 is putting a lot of emphasis on semiconductor manufacturing.
Yep.
They want to see companies building fabs in India.
Fabrication units.
Yeah, the places where they actually make the chips.
Okay.
And they're not just focused on manufacturing. They also want to develop indigenous chip design and assembly capabilities.
So a complete ecosystem.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
That's ambitious.
It is, but it's necessary if they want to be truly self-reliant.
I agree.
So it seems like PLI 2.0 is a much more, targeted and sophisticated approach.
Yeah, they've learned from the first round.
And now it's time to look at the bigger picture. How does all this compare to what other countries have done to become manufacturing powerhouses?
Right, because India isn't doing this in a vacuum.
Exactly. There are lessons to be learned from others.
Absolutely, like China, Japan, South Korea.
Yeah, they all went through their own industrial revolutions.
And they all used some similar strategies.
Like what?
Well, they all leveraged foreign OEMs to get things started.
So they brought in the big global companies to kind of kickstart things.
Yeah, to get access to capital technology expertise.
But they didn't just let those companies come in and do whatever they wanted.
No, they made sure there was technology transfer.
So that local companies could learn and develop their own capabilities.
Exactly.
And they all focused on exports as a key driver of growth.
Right, not just domestic consumption.
Yeah, they wanted to sell their products to the world.
And that forced them to be competitive.
Yeah, they had to constantly innovate and improve to keep up with the global market.
It's a tough but effective way to grow.
Our sources have a great example with China and their electric vehicle industry.
Oh, yeah?
They let Tesla build a factory there, which brought in a ton of investment, but it also pushed local suppliers to step up their game.
Right, because they wanted to be part of Tesla's supply chain.
Exactly. And that led to the emergence of Chinese EV brands like BYD.
So they became competitors.
Yeah, and now they're some of the biggest EV makers in the world.
It's a remarkable success story.
So that's kind of the model India is trying to follow.
Yeah. Attract foreign investment while also building up domestic capabilities.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance.
It is. You got to play your cards, right?
So to sum it all up, it seems like the PLI scheme has definitely gotten India moving in the right direction.
Yeah, they're on the path to becoming a major manufacturing hub.
But there are still some big hurdles to overcome.
Like scaling up production.
Increasing the amount of value added locally.
And achieving that global competitiveness.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
And that's where PLI 2.0 comes in.
Yeah, they're trying to fine-tune things.
Focus on exports, component localization.
And supporting MSMEs.
It's a more mature strategy.
And that focus on semiconductors is a sign that they're thinking long-term. So yeah, with the right policies and, effective execution, India has a real shot at becoming a major player in global manufacturing.
The potential is there.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into India's PLI scheme.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
Yeah, a key takeaway for you is that the shift from just focusing on production volume to emphasizing value addition, exports, and building a stronger local ecosystem is going to be crucial for India's success.
It's a complex undertaking.
Yeah, and here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Good.
Given all the competition out there and how fast technology is changing, what do you think are the one or two most critical factors that will determine whether India can really achieve its goal of becoming a true global manufacturing powerhouse?
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah, let us know what you think, and until next time, happy manufacturing.
Yeah, see you on the next deep dive.